Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, a Ford City staple is moving out. Plus, an artist's vision on full display at the Gordie Howe Bridge. It was unveiled today at the Canadian Port of Entry. Voting in the next federal election might look a bit different for folks in our region. We'll tell you about the latest proposed changes to the riding boundaries. And for 1 year, Beverly Jacobs has been advising the president of the University of Windsor on Indigenous Relations. She shares what it's been like for her and what's next. We start tonight in Ford City. Windsor's historic neighborhood is losing one of the few restaurants it has. The Grand Cantina has decided to relocate to Walkerville. And over the last several years, the business district has been in a revitalization phase. The CBC's TJ Deer joins us live from that neighborhood outside the restaurant tonight. TJ, why is the Grand Cantina packing up and moving out?
Well, Kat, the owners tell me that their Ford City location doesn't allow them to invite as many people as they would like. They're going to be moving to Walkerville, and the owners say they're excited about the move, and they feel their Walkerville location will allow them to invite more people than their location here in Ford City. Now, the restaurant opened here in Ford City in 2018, and at that time, the Grand Cantina was one of the first restaurants to open in Ford City in 15 years. Now, the owners say it's bittersweet that they'll be leaving the neighborhood.
No, it's been wonderful being here, but it's also exciting for us because we know that, somebody else is going to have their chance to really, create something new and unique here in this area and hopefully be very successful like we were.
Now, Woods says that their customers are also excited about the move. Now, she did say a few of them were concerned that the restaurant would be closing down for good, but she told them that they were just moving.
And TJ, how will this affect the Ford City neighborhood?
Well, the neighborhood, is going under a revitalization project that the Ford City BIA is overseeing. Now, the chair of the BIA, Shane Potvin, he said that last year there were properties that were sold and other properties that underwent renovations. Now, another business owner just down the street, he said that the Grand Cantina helped transform Ford City, but he doesn't want people to think that it's the end.
Although, Grand Cantina was the first business there, and they did so many wonderful things in really helping break down that stigma that was there and get more people to the block. There's a lot of things that have happened since, and a lot of businesses that have opened since, and there's more businesses coming, including a business in their location. And so there's so much more to be excited about in Ford City.
Now, Weber says he's happy that for the Grand Cantina owners that they've outgrown Ford City, and he can't wait for his business to do the same. Now, Potvin also mentioned that there will be 4 businesses opening in Ford City this year. He did mention he can't talk about one of them because the details of that are being finalized, but the other businesses that are going to be opening here include an ice cream parlor, a retail shop, and a restaurant that's going to be replacing the Grand Cantina.
Right, so we know that as the Grand Cantina is moving out, another restaurant's moving in. Do we know what restaurant that is?
We do. It's called Sawyer's Craft Barbecue, and they'll be serving Central Texas-style barbecue. Now, the owners started out by having a booth at the downtown Windsor Farmers Market over the last 2 years, and they say everybody who stopped by wanted them to have a more permanent presence.
So every week we were asked, where's your brick and mortar? Where can we get more of this? And we didn't have an answer. So we're really excited to just have a restaurant to give the people that.
So think more like, Central Texas style barbecue, brisket, ribs, sausage, and then pairing that with some great cocktails and beer, obviously with the patio, will be a great fit for the neighborhood.
So that's what Ford City will be getting eventually. Now, the owners of the Grand Cantina said they don't have a moving date set right now, but that they would be moving sometime in the spring. Kat?
Thanks for this, TJ. That's CBC's TJ Deer live in Ford City for us tonight. Turning to the United States now. There were tears and sadness as hundreds gathered to remember 3 students killed at Michigan State University. Those are friends and family of Brian Fraser. Other vigils were also held to remember Ariel Anderson and Alexandria Verner, both juniors at MSU. The 3 students were shot and killed Monday when a 43-year-old man stormed areas of the Michigan State University campus. Investigators say they believe he was planning to harm students at other schools as well. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound the night of the attack, and 5 others were critically injured. People living near the site of a toxic train derailment in Ohio are clear to go home. But 1 week after being told that they can safely return, many in the community are still choosing to stay away. These here are dramatic pictures of that derailment when it happened nearly 2 weeks ago. Officials say 20 of the train's rail cars were listed as carrying hazardous materials. Experts say the situation could have turned deadly had officials not ordered an evacuation. And now, despite safety assurances from officials, there are growing complaints of headaches, bad smells, and poor air quality. CBC News reached out to Environment Climate Change Canada to see if this will have any impact on southwestern Ontario. It says it's highly unlikely that the region would have seen any effect. That's because our region is directly north-northwest of the derailment, and the prevailing winds come from the west-southwest. A new splash of art has been unveiled on the Gordie Howe Bridge project today. A Canadian artist is responsible for the creation on the international crossing, but talk quickly turned to timelines. The CBC's Dale Molnar has all the details.
There's also sort of a little bit more of the prairie sort of landscape.
Port Moody, British Columbia artist Sarah Graham points out the different components of the facade sculpture she created for the Gordie Howe Bridge. The artwork is called On the Other Side of Tomorrow. The sketches and other artwork will be on display at Art Windsor, Essex, starting next month. What's on the building is composed of stamped concrete sections depicting scenes across Canada, such as mountains, lighthouses, and urban landscape.
I am astounded with the craftsmanship of the fabricator. It blew my mind. I did not expect everything to be so crisp and so clear, and it just was beyond my expectation.
Take a step back and big progress is being made, but it's not moving as fast as they initially thought.
The bridge might not be finished until sometime in 2025, but Michael Hatchell from Bridging North America says they are working towards trying to get it back on schedule so it would be finished by the original deadline of November of 2024.
Hatchell says some factors have to come together to make it happen.
It's hard to say because thinking about these buildings, for example, after these buildings are framed in, the weather doesn't bother you a whole lot. So you can continue to work on those year round, which is a positive. From a bridge, and as it gets colder and colder, I'm not sure what the actual temperature is off the top of my head, you get to where it's hard to be up 500 plus feet up in the air and doing construction.
Mild winter help you get ahead a few weeks or months?
Mild winter will help us because you have to make some assumptions about how fast you can go across the river, and a mild winter, again, helps with efficiency of the construction. The size of this thing is about 130 acres. And over 12,000 square meters of building. More than halfway up. The cables have started, and throughout by the end of this year, they're more than halfway out across the river. If you line the cables up end to end, you could probably go from here to Alaska.
Meanwhile, the Bridge Authority is without a CEO. Bryce Phillips resigned earlier this year. The vice president of the Bridge Authority says she can't give any updates on the search for their new CEO. She says that's in the hands of the federal government. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
A tax increase is likely coming to residents in the town of Essex. It's a 3.91% jump after Essex Council tentatively approved its 2023 budget this week. Officials say that's below the rate of inflation. The tax increase works out to an increase of $117 for the average homeowner across the 4 wards. Council agreed to spend $13 million to fund capital projects and infrastructure upgrades. That includes $6 million on improving roads. The budget will formally be adopted later next month. The new federal electoral riding boundary proposals are out, and it comes after the commission in charge went back to the drawing board. The first proposal back in August prompted lots of criticism in our region. For example, in Chatham-Kent, which is currently split into 2 ridings, the proposal was to divide it into 3. But the latest plan is a single riding for Chatham-Kent with Leamington still attached.
The Chatham-Kent Council is what we submitted into the process was that we want 1 representative. That was great that they listened to us, as well as the benefit of that a lot of voters are really were confused in Chatham-Kent. You know, they're voting for what MP are they voting for, depending on that arbitrary line that's drawn through Chatham-Kent. So this proposal will very much help the voters. On the flip side, we've had 2 representatives. We have 2 voices, both at the federal and provincial level. So if we go to the 1, we have 1 voice. So I mean, you got good and bad with happening with the proposal, but moving forward, we'll work with whatever we got.
So this here is a look at the new map with the new boundaries for southwestern Ontario. This here, that's what the new Chatham-Kent-Leamington riding would look like. Again, 1 united riding. And here's a look now at Windsor-Essex, where we've got the ridings of Essex, Windsor West, and Windsor-Tecumseh. And the most important thing to note that would change how things are right now is that the westernmost part of Lakeshore, west of the Puce River, would join the Windsor-Tecumseh riding. The final version of the proposal is expected this fall. Beverly Jacobs is 1 year into her role at the University of Windsor as the senior advisor to the president on Indigenous Relations. She says she's already seeing some gains around affecting change and building relationships with Indigenous people, like working on an Indigenous strategic plan for the university. She told me there's a lot more work to be done so that Indigenous people can feel safe on campus.
The real way to address it is to educate. That's what I think racist. Some people don't even know they're racist. Sometimes they don't even know that the things that they say are racist because the education system didn't allow anyone to learn about the history of Indigenous people and the impacts of colonization and what we're dealing with today. And so that's part of my job. And all of those Indigenous, you know, there's faculty here and staff who is part of our job to educate the institution and educate students and to be aware of that history that was never taught historically.
You talked about education and educating staff here and leaders here about all this. Sometimes we hear about how exhausting and taxing that can be for communities that have to speak out for themselves, especially when it's associated with racism and trauma. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's hard. It's emotional. You know, when we're having to talk about the history of our people and who we are and where we come from and the stereotypes and the racism, you know, it's a battle. It is a battle every day. It's like having to educate every day, somebody every day. You know, who else has to do that, right? As a people. I mean, it happens, you know, with people who are hired. But some can work from, you know, the courses that they teach, and they don't have to deal with that at the end of the day.
So how do you hold the institution accountable that, you know, their actions match their words and their promises?
It's always speaking out, always speaking to the public, always saying you have to take responsibility. Like our laws as Indigenous people is about responsibility. So for me, it's like, okay, you have to also take that responsibility when we're, as Indigenous peoples, coming into this institution, that we have knowledge to share and we're willing to share it. So we want that reciprocal relationship. And in order for us to do that, we have to know that you're going to take the responsibility to act and you're actually going to hear us, right? And take action from the words that we're willing to share. And I feel that I have that respect from the president. And, you know, he hired me to do a task, and he listens and he understands. And I believe it's because also of his own, you know, experience in other institutions that he's taking that on and learning from other knowledge holders in other institutions. So I really, really believe that, I mean, it takes a lot. It's a lot of work, It feels like I could probably do this 24 hours a day in order to keep up to the work that needs to be done, but I also have to look after myself and really ensuring that there's movement. So I'm very vocal. I've learned to have a voice, and I use my voice. And so if I see something, or there's words that are said that are just doesn't seem right, I'll just I'm only speaking the truth. And so it's only I do that in every space, everywhere I go.
In addition to working on the Indigenous Strategic Plan to build better relationships with Indigenous communities, she also helped establish a Knowledge Holders Council. And over the next year, she wants to see the establishment of a permanent Indigenous exec leadership position. And an Indigenous language instructor in Saskatchewan has a creative way of connecting with young students. Teresa Owach teaches children at Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation. And to help her, she brings along a very special sidekick. Louise Big Eagle explains.
You guys ready to go through the animals?
Yeah.
Who remembers what this is?
Chaba.
Chaba, huh? Chaba. Yes, that's a beaver, right?
Teresa Owach is a language teacher at Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation. But she doesn't teach alone. This is Kushi, which means grandmother in Nakota.
I wouldn't stand up and yell at the children. Sit down now, but Kushi, she'll have no problem. Nachi, dang. She'll yell at them and they'll all come running. We'll point out that, we need to listen to the elder in the class because she is the oldest. And she helps me with the respect. She helps me calm the children down. She's a great asset to help teach. Like, the kids just love her.
While Owach uses some English, Kushi only speaks Nakota when they teach grade 1 students 3 times a week.
She makes us laugh.
They teach here at the Nakota Oyate Education Center, 100 kilometers east of Regina. Carry the Kettle is one of just 4 Nakota communities in Saskatchewan, and the traditional language is in jeopardy. It's considered critically endangered by the United Nations. Growing up, Owach was sent off reserve to a school where she says she was ridiculed and made to feel ashamed.
Do you think having Kushi with you kind of gives you more confidence too in teaching the language?
Oh, definitely. I certainly lack, a lot of self-confidence, as lots of First Nations people my age do.
She forgot her language for many years, but her sister Frida helped her rediscover Nakota before Frida died. Now, Kushi wears clothing made from Frida's dresses.
I sew them into outfits that will fit her, and to me, maybe kind of foolish, but I think it gives the essence of my sister to Kushi, so that she's always with me.
And with that inspiration, Owach is giving these children the education she's never had.
She said, "Have a good day, and I will see you all again."
With Kushi's help, she hopes to inspire the next generation of Nakota speakers. Louise Beagle, CBC News, Carry the Kettle, Nakota Nation.
Live look outside there, the sun setting. We had some wild winds rocking our region today. In some cases, the winds got up to 100 kilometers per hour. Claude Kennedy will be here after the break to tell us more. As Windsor experienced a high today of around 16 degrees and not much of a winter this season, those strong winds today aside, Newfoundlanders spent the day digging out as some eastern parts of the province remain under a winter storm warning. Between 25 and 35 centimeters of snow have already come down and more expected today. A Valentine's Day storm grounded the majority of flights at St. John's International Airport yesterday. Schools and government offices across the region were closed as well. This is a good time to bring in Colette Kennedy because my, oh my, what a contrast from what our outdoors looks like today.
Yes, I mean, oh, winter can be a cruel mistress. Just incredible. I mean, it wasn't quite warm enough today that you're looking at that video and thinking, oh, I'd like to feel that. It's just like the cooling effect of that snow. It wasn't quite that warm. It's more, it's like, okay, I'm glad I'm not having to shovel quite that much. Yeah, let's take a look at some of the daytime highs. First of all, just a broad strokes of what the daytime highs look like across the southern parts of the province here, and that 15 for Windsor and 16 Hamilton and St. Catharines. Nation's capital, all right, you know, still single digits, but 8 degrees. I'm sure there were lots of folks who were happy with that. But let's take a look now, a little deeper dive into some of the records, like Harrow at 13.4 today, a new record there. Point Pelee, 10.8. Let's round that up to 11, but I did give us 1 decimal point on these. Ridgetown, 15.4, Sarnia at 15, and just we'll take a little bit of a tour here. You can see some of the other numbers showing up, and that Hamilton, that gets rounded up to that 16, a new record in Toronto at 15 there as well. Peterborough, 10.6, Kemptville, even Kemptville getting in on the action, 11.5 there. So current temperature, still lots of double digits to go around. We've got to talk about the winds, of course, from earlier as well. But I'm going to show you what's going to happen as those winds switch to more of a northerly direction. So they're lighter tonight, but they're going to kick up tomorrow, not as gusty as today. And that allows the temperature to fall down to freezing, right around 0 overnight tonight. We did have wind gusts up to 100 kilometers an hour. That was right around the 11 o'clock hour. But then even after that, towards noon and 1, we were looking at winds that were gusting 80 to 90 kilometers an hour before they began to drop off. Quiet conditions tonight, but I'm showing you the perspective of a Texas low that's just getting its act together, and it's coming back this way. So it's going to be moving in tomorrow, and it will be having an impact once it does. A little bit of mixing or freezing rain possible from Windsor up towards Sarnia into the afternoon hours. It will make haste and move out overnight, but just be aware that it could be a little bit tricky for us into those afternoon hours for tomorrow. So think afternoon into the evening. Some of the roadways could be a bit slick. 3 tomorrow, and then a wake-up call of -2 as we go into Friday.
Again, it's just that up and down, never stops.
Yes, although it's still not going to look like St. John's, but yes.
Yes, there you go. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, a big change at the RCMP. Stay with us. Let's turn now to the situation in Turkey and Syria. More than 9 days after 2 high-magnitude quakes devastated the region and killed more than 41,000 people, we continue to see dramatic rescues like this. This is the scene earlier this morning in Kahramanmaraş. A 42-year-old woman pulled from the rubble of a collapsed building after surviving for 222 hours. Overnight, a similar rescue of a 77-year-old woman trapped for 212 hours in Adıyaman. You can see rescuers cautiously chipping away at debris before carrying her to an ambulance. UN officials say the aid effort is now focused on providing survivors with food and shelter. The commissioner of the RCMP is retiring. Brenda Lucki will step down March 17th. Lucki was sworn in as commissioner in 2018, the first woman to take on the post full time. In a letter today, she said she's accomplished a lot of her goal to modernize the service. She says there's increased accountability. In her statement, she said the RCMP has been addressing systemic racism and working to create a safe and equitable workforce. Lucki has faced criticism during her term. She was accused of political interference during the inquiry into the 2020 mass shooting in Nova Scotia. And she also came in for criticism over her performance during the convoy protests. Alberta's Justice Minister said Lucki didn't inform the federal cabinet about all the law enforcement options before the Emergencies Act was invoked last year. Now, before we go, we'll take you to Saskatchewan. Getting around in the cold and snow of a Canadian winter can be tough, especially for people with mobility issues. But a man in Saskatoon is blazing new trails with a clever modification he made to his walker.
And I'm the creator of my SKODADLE, which gives me the freedom of mobility in the winter.
Duncan Myers took the inspiration for his SKODADLER from the sliding frames used to help kids learn to skate. He took a pair of skis and replaced the wheels on his traditional walker, and he wears ice cleats on his boots for added control in the ice and snow. Myers is recovering from a stroke, and he says it's important for him to stay active. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.